think I'm just proud of the whole journey and the players and staff together because we really just hung on to the people in the locker room because we know there's a lot of things going outside. Maybe people aren't talking about us in the beginning because we were, didn't have the best record. And now people are talking about us and what their expectations are.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of The Late Sub. It is Tuesday, November 12th. We have a packed episode for you. We're going to do a quick recap of the quarterfinal round of the NWSL playoffs, talk about what went right, what went wrong, and how going all chalk isn't always necessarily bad. And then we have a lovely conversation with Bay FC midfielder Kiki Pickett talking about that team's turnaround and just how close they came to that upset bid in this quarterfinal round and just sort of the changes that the team went through and how they support their players on and off the pitch. Going to be a great episode. Let's jump in. So first order of the day, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. We got to talk through it. We got to process it. We got to get ready for next week. The NWSL playoffs have arrived. I know I got to keep saying this, but we've gone from previewing to recapping because the quarterfinal round did take place this weekend. 4 games, largest postseason round in NWSL history. It was actually really nicely spaced out. I think this is something where the TV deal kind of shines. We had a game on Friday, a game on Saturday, and then 2 games on Sunday. It was all chalk, kind of as expected. If you listened to our preview episode last Thursday, you maybe had a sense that the top 4 was highly favored here. They were highly favored in points, as we talked about over and over and over again, sort of the point differentials between the top 4 in the league and the rest of the field. Does not mean that these games were not interesting, but I am not particularly surprised that we are going to see a traditional top 4 semifinal round. I was kind of joking about it, about how we kind of came full circle here from bigger and better, postseason. We're going to get more teams in. We're going to have more underdogs. We're going to have a chance to make a difference. And then at the end of the day, it's a top 4 seed semifinal. And both of those games are going to be fabulous because all 4 of those teams are very, very good. So we're going to run down results and do a little bit of analysis on each particular game because I think many of them, at least, were interesting. And I'm going to be kind of like shooting my own shot here because I think actually a lot of it played out as expected. Like I said, if you listen to mine or anybody else's previews last week, these teams kind of play how they play, and these games kind of played out the way that we expected. So on Friday, the Orlando Pride thumped the Chicago Red Stars 4-1. This was the number 1 seed versus the number 8 seed. It was not close. Orlando looks great. Chicago looked like they were ready for the offseason, and that was that. Kansas City gets a slim win over North Carolina 1-0. We'll talk about that one too. Washington overcame Bay FC's upset bid in extra time 2-1. And then Gotham defeated Portland 2-1 with a late second half stoppage time goal from Rose Lavelle to stop that one from going into extra time because it looked like maybe it was destined for that. And then a final twist of fate at the very, very end of stoppage time gave Gotham the win. So seeds 1 through 4, they get the wins here. But how did it happen? So we're going to start with Orlando versus Chicago and talk about maybe some of the more wide games in terms of quality or impact, and then talk about some of the closer ones. Orlando had all the momentum. Chicago did not. Kind of as we expected, Orlando came out with a lot of attacking purpose. They didn't feel like they had to play super conservatively because they knew that they could handle some of the limited options that Chicago has on the counterattack. Chicago comes out very conservative. They're playing off the ball. They're letting Orlando have the ball. They're trying to sort of bend and not break. And then Barbara Banda just does what she does. She has a brace in this game. The defense kind of looked like it was in shambles for Chicago. They were not really on the same page at all. I think one of the concerning things for Chicago maybe in this playoff game to work on for the future, because I didn't expect more from Chicago this year. I don't think that any of this could be considered a failure, but they do have things to work on in the offseason. It's just that people still didn't seem completely on the same page. I think we saw Mal Swanson kind of trying to get teammates where she wanted them to be and move with urgency. And I still think just some of that confusion is not what you want to see at this point of the season. But they do have this core identity. They have a good coaching staff. I think, frankly, for Chicago, if they want to compete with the top 5-6 teams in this league, it's just about roster construction. They were put at a disadvantage with a lot of free agents asking out due to their sort of off the field issues and the fact that it wasn't a desirable place for free agents. They are working on changing that part, as everybody knows. Then you start attracting the talent and you can put different rosters together, and then you can change the tactics and change the coaching style. I think that the way that they played, again, that sort of very conservative football at the end of the season was a pretty just sort of open admission as to kind of where the team was at. And then you try to have a really ambitious offseason to be able to change those things and change those principles. Meanwhile, Orlando kind of looks like a buzzsaw. They're flying. We talked about how the international break was really good for them. They look well rested. Banda gets a couple of goals after having a bit of a dry period at the end of the regular season. You're seeing, Marta play very well. You're seeing sort of put that edge together at home. They will be hosting Kansas City next weekend. So they're kind of building that culture of winning at home. Orlando looks great. I mean, we always say how hard it is to double shield versus championship, but I think that it was always going to be one of these top 4 teams. And I think Orlando going into the semifinal round has just as much of a shot as anybody. But the game itself, not particularly exciting, other than you're just going like, wow, Orlando is playing really well and Chicago is really struggling with it. So Chicago, I think, has some very clear pathways forward in the offseason after making the marginal gains that they needed to make this season to make even a good offseason viable. Fabulous for them. But now they need to take that next step and take that next level of seriousness if they want to compete at the top. Orlando moves on. Kansas City wins what ultimately is a close one against North Carolina, despite at the beginning of the game thinking that it was possible that Kansas City might run away with this. You saw in that Orlando-Chicago game some quick goals, 1, 2, 3, really fast, really kind of changed the game state significantly and changed the tenor of how even the underdog perhaps can react. Kansas City scores first. Of course, it's Temwa Chawinga. Who else but Temwa Chawinga scoring to put Kansas City up 1-0. And you think, oh my gosh, this is not what North Carolina needs at all. We talked about this last week. North Carolina likes to hold the ball. They like to be methodical. They like to do one-touch passing. They like to utilize passing sequences and sustained pressure against another team's defense to find that opening and get that goal. They're not really a huge counterattacking team, unlike some of the other teams, like, for example, Kansas City that we saw in this playoff. And so I personally, we saw Kansas City go up 1-0. Kansas City has a couple other offensive opportunities. And I'm thinking to myself, I think what North Carolina is already doing is so hard, right? And I think as good as and as consistent as North Carolina is, and I think you can even make the argument that they're just like 1 or 2 offensive pieces away. Caroline did start this game after being limited throughout the entire season when she comes back from that ACL injury that she suffered at the end of last year. But you always wonder, like, how do you come back? If you are the high possession team, if you are the methodical team, if you are the low tempo team, the slower tempo team, how do you come back from 1-0? And North Carolina actually almost does this. I was actually very impressed with the way North Carolina responded in this game because Kansas City plays fast. And you saw even North Carolina, they were kind of, choking up on the keeper and getting in the keeper's way because they didn't want to handle that quick transition punt out to Temwa Chawinga. Kansas City moves the ball so quickly and they'll kill you space behind them, right? That's how that ultimately, that opening goal gets scored. But then they also kind of shift the pitch. I was really impressed with how North Carolina stayed calm. They played their game. They did not let them get themselves pulled into any sort of higher tempo outside of their characteristics. And it almost works. If you watch this game, you saw those moments where North Carolina almost like literally lulled Kansas City into a false sense of security. They did have 1 goal ruled out due to goalkeeper interference, but that was a very, very touching moment for Kansas City. And as we know, we talked about how Kansas City, their huge vulnerability in the defense is off of set pieces and off of wave 2 possession, right? And we saw that again in this game. If the game slows down, if they have to keep the ball in front of them, if they're not able to go, their defenders are prone to making mistakes. North Carolina almost gets a chance to bring this level playing their game, which is very impressive to me. Though I might go so far as to make the grand statement that I'm not sure that North Carolina's style of play is ever necessarily going to be able to make it through kind of a 3-game playoff. It's just so hard to do that in knockout soccer. You're open to too many vulnerabilities on the counter, and there are too many NWSL teams who are going to be quickly reactive to that style of play, and you just have to play it perfectly. And ultimately, this game was about the Courage having trouble punching it in at the end. Echoes some of their overall struggles this year. If you go back and listen to any North Carolina mentions mid-season or early in the season, we always talked about, the way they play is fabulous. They are possibly the most technically gifted or accurate team in the whole league, but can they score goals? And that's what soccer is ultimately about, especially in a playoff situation. For the Current, very resilient from them. Like I said, they had some wobbly moments where they kind of got lulled into this slower tempo, but they kind of snapped back out of it. They did a good job. Actually, once North Carolina started picking up tempo as the game clock was winding down, it seemed like the Current got more and more comfortable. It was as North Carolina pushed, the Current were like, oh, this is more our game. We can totally hold on to this. They did rely on Chawinga a lot, and I think that's maybe the big red flag for me going into next weekend, which again, we'll do a longer preview later this week. But Temwa Chawinga put us in a really heavy shift when it looks like that knee that had her day today going into the quarterfinal was still hurting. And now they go to Orlando, and that's going to be a really physically taxing game as well. So I think for the Current, this was a showcase of what they do so well, but also a showcase of some of the cost of that, whether it is last ditch defending or very much relying on a player like Chawinga, who part of the reason why I think she should win MVP this year is because she's actually a very good defender from the front line. She is required so often to defend through possession, where they'll kick the ball up to her and they'll just say, Temwa, go get it, and keep the ball away from the other team so they can't get back to us and counter on us. So it's just a lot of running, and she put her body through the ringer for this one. So I'm hopeful that she'll be back at the height of her powers next week. But welcome, congratulations to Kansas City. Again, North Carolina, I think they should feel very good about this season. It was a very strong season for them. But how do you turn this really lovely style of football into like a winner, capital W winner? And I think that is the question for them going into next year. Games get even closer on Sunday. Bay FC takes the Washington Spirit to extra time. Not to say I called it, but I called it. Bay did score first. Again, this game kind of played out like we thought. It was very quick. It was a lot of counterattacking. It was a lot of ball in the air. It was kind of a track meet. You saw these teams go end to end to end to end to end. And even though there wasn't scoring until I think in the 80th, 81st minute, they had their chances. They had space back inside. You saw a lot of really good 1v1 defending. Bay FC trying to keep Trinity Rodman off the board. Or you saw on the other end, you saw Ashley Hatch get very frustrated. Or you saw, Rachel Kundananji trying to get around Washington's back line. And I thought that those individual battles, those individual duels were really fun. Again, I was watching this and I was like, this is classic NWSL. This is fast paced. It's counterattacking football. It's highly transitional. The ball is in the air. The ball is moving quickly on the ground. And you're seeing these incredible 1v1 dribblers try to find their spaces inside. I also saw Osha Wallace goes first. There's an impact sub. Penelope Hawking comes into the game. She was someone that they signed mid-season. We talk about sort of those shifts for Bay FC, right? Someone that they signed mid-season out of Chicago. Really, really nice impact sub there. Osha Wallace goes first. Washington center back, Tara McEwen. She gets the equalizer, and Audi Field goes wild. Everyone goes crazy. I thought the crowd in Washington, D.C. looked incredible. And so then it's in a deadlock going into extra time. Both teams are exhausted. And so you're kind of wondering who can find that last piece of magic. Instead of the last piece of magic, what we got was actually just sort of a little bit more brutal than that, which is that it was an own goal by a very good defender, Caprice Didasco, in extra time to give Washington the win. Very enjoyable game. I think everyone who kind of had an eye on whether Bay was the upset bid in this round could feel very validated by that, by the way that Bay kind of came out. They came out with confidence. I just really like the way that they're playing again the second half of this season. I'm very interested to see how they use the bones of this season to make something that's even probably more consistent. They were very win or lose, all or nothing this year. I think this game was a really good example. You think, oh, it's going to end in a tie. It's going to PKs. Nope. All or nothing for Bay FC. Unfortunately, they're on the wrong end of it this time, but that's also why I think they had one of the better shots of anybody of getting an upset in this round. They really emptied the tank to force Washington into a mistake in the back. Ultimately, it was Bay FC that made the mistake, and Washington gets the win here. I'm continuously impressed by the Spirit. I think whenever we talk about doubts about the Spirit, it's usually coming from a place of understanding their injury list, right? They had this shot of all of the injured players who were in that suite kind of cheering their teammates on. This is not necessarily plan A for them. They have a lot of talent that just can't be on the pitch right now. But what we're seeing from the players on the field has been really incredible. I thought Hal Hirschfeld, oh my God, hadn't put in a remarkable shift in the midfield in this game. I thought Trinity Rodman did everything she possibly could to keep the team in it. I think you saw Hatch maybe be slightly distractible. I think there was a lot of talking to the ref in this game. I mean, the equalizer by McEwen, I was like, every one of her teammates is complaining about a possible handball, but she's the one who puts the ball in the back of the net. I think we saw these players get kind of frustrated. And like I said, it's edgy. It's a little bit clippy. It's a little bit chippy. Everyone is really going for this because this stuff really matters. And it's the NWSL playoffs and people are playing tough. And while Bay will be disappointed, I do think this is a hell of a finish from them. And they should feel very good about what they're going to be able to do in 2025 if they handle the offseason correctly. And for Washington, I just am so impressed again, individually and as a team, how they're able to understand their roles as well as they do, how they're able to find each other. I thought Casey Kruger had a good game in this game. I am just really impressed by the way they play as a team, understanding that they've had to be like next player up mentality due to these injuries. So total fair play to Washington. I think Bay gave them a hell of a challenge, and it was really fun to see them take the next step and overcome that. And they will play Gotham this weekend. Gotham wins the final quarterfinal here. They went over Portland, another close one, 2-1. This one, again, we all kind of expected. We saw the attacking firepower that Portland was coming into at this one. We saw the momentum after their very strong regular season ending against Angel City. And again, tactically, it was kind of what we expected. Gotham played the high line against Sophia Smith. Sophia Smith does get one goal called back for offside in this game. They put pressure on Portland's back line. I think everyone saw that really long handball check that was generated just due to consistent pressure that Gotham was putting on Portland's back line, which, as we know, they are not immune to mistakes. They make mistakes at times. But Portland did let Gotham have a lot of the ball. This was kind of my thought, right? Where I thought maybe for Portland to have the best chance here, they come out a little bit conservative, more of a 4-2-3-1. They sit off ball and they force Gotham to unlock their defense. They force Gotham to come up with the problem solving. And I think we saw a little bit of that chess match at the beginning of this game. It was kind of a bit of whiplash going from that quick, like run, end to end Washington versus Bay game into a really more like, okay, we are going to figure these pieces out. Portland is challenging Gotham to become the problem solvers, make them sit on the ball a little bit more. No, don't cough up those easy turnovers. Don't let this become a transition game. And I think we saw sort of that methodical kind of element play out. And again, you saw the Gotham, high line versus Portland's offense. These were all things that we were expecting from these two teams and these two coaches: possess, counter, rinse, repeat, just over and over and over again. But then ultimately both teams score on somewhat soft set pieces. So you have the best laid plans and you put everything together and you do a great job. And then maybe you give something up that's kind of soft on a set piece. Tierna Davidson scores first for Gotham, and then Raylan Turner scores for Portland. I thought both of these goals were, in a larger sense, deserved in a way, I guess. I mean, the XG in this game was very, very low in the run of play. It was really played out. I was wrong. I thought it was going to be overlapping the midfield, but it actually mostly played out in the middle of the pitch. Again, Portland really just letting Gotham recycle the ball over and over and over again and see what they can do. And then in second half stoppage time, Rose Lavelle punches Gotham through. They get the win without this going to extra time. Portland spoke a little bit after this game about some of their availability frustrations. They finally get Morgan Weaver back. They never felt like they really got Sophia Smith at the height of her powers after the Olympics. They say she's been having trouble training. Portland obviously is having general manager turnover in this offseason. I'm going to be interested to see how they bolster Rob Gale's staff after hiring him permanently midseason. A bit of a disappointing season for Portland. I don't think they're going to shy away from that, but they at least played some of their better football at the end of the season. And I think that's all that you can hope for going into what I think is a crucial year in terms of free agency, not only attracting free agents, but also just working on retention for the really, really talented players that you already have. So, like I said, top four. It's going to be a top four semifinal. Orlando's going to play Kansas City. Washington's going to play Gotham. I like these kind of sectioned off semifinals. I think we've got a really nice little rivalry going between Orlando and Kansas City. I think Washington and Gotham, because they're so close to each other geographically, I think that's going to be a great game. I think that there's a nice little sort of regional thing going on where these two teams over the years, especially when they were doing more divisional stuff, they play each other all the time. They're two of the OG franchises. I think it's nice that you've got that going on the other semifinal. And I think we've got a lot of star power in this. And I think any combination of these four teams are going to be fabulous for the NWSL championship. So I think that the playoffs themselves is the quarterfinal round of success. Kinda. There were some really nice games this weekend. I think you have to look at a team like Bay and say, yes, of course you want to see a team like Bay in the postseason, because we got to see that arc be fulfilled of that momentum going into the second half of the year. But I think we'll probably feel a little bit more comfortable with it when we get back down to only 50% of the league making playoffs, because again, that 1 versus 8 was kind of rough between Orlando and Chicago. So glass half full, glass half empty. I enjoyed the quarterfinal round, but I'm very excited to get to these semifinals because both of these games are going to rip. And now we have something a little bit different. I kind of waxed poetic about Bay FC in the first part of the podcast episode. And we have a really nice chat that we recorded last week. So this was before the quarterfinal round. So some of this stuff is going to feel maybe slightly dated as we predict a game that has now already happened. But I had a lovely conversation with Bay FC midfielder Kiki Pickett. And I think a lot of it holds very, very true, despite the result in this quarterfinal, of how Bay FC put everything together in the second half of the year, how she specifically in a position change added to those steps forward, and her role in sort of adapting and changing as a player this year. We talked about how Bay FC supports their athletes on and off the field. And I like this as a capper, because I think if there's one cool success story of a team that didn't quite make it out of that quarterfinal round, it is Bay FC. So I hope y'all enjoy and glean some stuff from this, both for this year and for next year, from Kiki Pickett at Bay FC. All right, so we are here with Bay FC midfielder Kiki Pickett. Hey, Kiki, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Big week, right? Down to the wire, making it to the playoffs and Bay FC's inaugural season as a club. Very exciting time. If you could just maybe start by summing up the emotions in the locker room right now going into this quarterfinal.
Um, yeah, I think we're very excited to get to this next step. I think we always knew that we could make it to the playoffs. And I know a lot of people might be like, oh, they made it to the playoffs. This is historical. This is all they need. But honestly, our mindset is like, we can keep going. No one's gonna want to play us. We're kind of like a wild card situation. So hopefully, like our ability to come in and kind of sneak our way through every stage we can get, hopefully will give us the advantage.
Well, that's been, one of the mainstays of NWSL postseason history, right? Is you never count out the teams that make it in late because momentum is a real thing. And it seems like with Bay FC, maybe more than any other team this season, you guys kind of hit the burners in the second half of the season to make that late push. Is momentum something that you guys can feel going into games when like the good performances start to go one after one after one? Or does it still just feel like no, we're just executing what we always wanted to be doing and we're taking it one game at a time?
Yeah, I think this is always what we wanted. I mean, it never like fit until now. Like the puzzle pieces are finally layering onto each other, which is very nice. But like you said, momentum, we are having a good run here. We are building on top of the things that we've been working on all season, and it's finally like clicking. And hopefully we can continue to strive and progress throughout because hopefully 3 games max.
Well, you guys have seen some changes in the locker room as well. You've seen some players come in. How do you maintain kind of that steady balance of having these key contributors in? Like I think a good example is someone like Abby Dahlkemper, Penelope Hawking, and
Mhm.
make those changes to the roster while also maintaining that very close knit vibe that you guys have.
Yeah, I think well from the jump in preseason, there's a whole new set of girls. So
Sure.
we're used to just come on in. We're good to that inclusive feeling because we were all new, we were all learning, and so I think having that attitude in the beginning of the year, knowing that we have to teach everyone, we have to, just stick to each other and stick to the game plan. Bringing in new players was kind of easy for us. We're all like, all right,
Mhm.
here's what we've been doing. This is what we're gonna do. If you have any questions, let us know. We got you. So I don't think anything has changed, but we're a very inclusive group.
Does it feel like it takes a certain type of player to be able to kind of take the ebbs and the flows? Expansion always, I think, comes with curveballs. You never necessarily know what the challenges are going to be with a brand new team. How have you felt like you've adapted to that? And do you think it takes a special kind of mindset to be able to roll with sort of the punches of a first year with a club like that?
Yeah, I think you just need constant reminders that this is a first year team, and also being with my first year at Kansas City as well. Come jumping into that, they were all telling me things, and I'm like, oh, really? Okay, understood. So you just try to take in input out, and then you just try not to think too much and like hold on to the things that like maybe like certain culture things, standards may not be as straightforward because you're building them as they go.
Right.
So you gotta kind of be understanding and willing to have patience.
Well, and you're the perfect person to talk to in that regard because, I mean, from the outside, I can speak to watching the performances for Bay FC. So much got kind of locked into place when you started making sort of that defensive midfield space your own. As you started getting more time in that particular area of the pitch, as people know you were signed as a defender, kind of making that shift. What has that journey been like for you? Again, kind of keeping that open mind and adapting to kind of making that area of the pitch your own this season.
Yeah, I think I said it a couple times when people ask me. It was just like a first week was a mental overload. I was exhausted after trying to learn everything that I needed to know, and in the midfield, you have to know what other people need to know, where they need to be, and so I was just like, "Whew, I need a little mental break, and then I'm ready to go again." Um, I think it's been pretty good because I like the ball at my feet, and that's usually what the midfield does, control the tempo of the game. And as the six, you're also the disruptor defensively, and I love those interceptions going in for hard tackles. So I think I don't even know how many games in, but I slowly became to feel like this will be my position. I have to make sure that I do my role. as well as I can and make sure my teammates get everything that they expect, and then being able to dictate the rest of the team as well.
That makes sense. That was going to be my next question is like, did you have a moment or have you had the moment yet where you're like, I feel very comfortable here. I feel like this is all really kind of flowing where you don't have to necessarily have the thought on top of the thought, right? Of what do I need to be doing? It's just kind of free flowing through you.
Yeah, I don't remember an actual game. I would say I think I worked a lot of my confidence and courage for the North Carolina game away. Because I knew like there was a lot of like mental stuff going in between that and just, former team, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. So I had to like kind of calm my nerves and just go based off of instinct and not think too much. And I think that's when I realized that I don't need to think so hard playing the six, and I actually kind of know what's going on, that
Mm-hmm.
I can just play the game. So I think that was a huge stepping stone that I realized.
That makes a lot of sense where it's almost needing to have like more assignments on top of playing the number six to be like, nope, we're simplifying, we're
Yeah.
letting the instincts take over. That makes total sense. I mean, I remember, so I'm based in Chicago, so saw you guys play the Wrigley game. That was, I
Hmm.
think, a huge game for you guys coming into Chicago against a record crowd and taking the win. And you were awesome in that game, might I say.
Thanks.
And but around that time, Albertin had talked about how some of the messaging had changed for the team, right? Where there were more maybe processes on what was happening in the attack or trying to get things flowing and then maybe looking more defensive. How has your experience been sort of seeing some of that messaging shift of, okay, we have some parts of the team up and running, but we need to solidify other parts of the team to make this playoff run that you guys are playing now?
Yeah, I think it goes in the steps of like how we progress, going through like little blocks and stepping stones, and realizing some things we haven't covered yet, and some situations that we get from different teams we haven't been exposed to. So I think every game has helped us learn and build our blocks to be like, okay, when this does happen, we can do this defensively, offensively. And I guess the mindset switch was like, if we're so focused on defense, we got to make sure our offense is correct. If we're so focused on offense, we got to make sure our defense is correct. And then we like eventually put those two together and it just clicked.
As a midfielder, how satisfying is it to see those two kind of elements of the team come together into kind of a full flowing performance from the whole team?
Yeah. I think it's very nice because the more we have the ball, the less running, we do. So,
So true. Yeah. Yeah.
so when that happens, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about the playoffs. So this is a shift. I mean, like you said, making the playoffs is great. It's a lot of history that BFC made, but I think so many players, you wouldn't be in this if you were just trying to get, a top 8 finish. You want to go all the way. And as you mentioned, BFC is kind of coming into this as a bit of a wild card. You've had some really good performances against some really good teams in the last couple of weeks. What does it feel like to be coming into the postseason kind of as an NWSL underdog? What is that mentality for you guys?
Um, I think we're ready to surprise people.
Yeah.
If no one else is ready, we're ready. And if you think you have us, you don't. Because we have a lot of attacking threats. We have a lot of defensive stoppers. Where we got almost everything you need on one team together, and we're just clicking at the right time. So best of luck to everyone else.
Amazing. Well, I feel like too, I think a number of teams, this is also, I think, why some teams do really well coming into the quarterfinal round is you guys have been trying to make the playoffs over the last, let's say, like 6-week period, have been running kind of a playoff drill already,
Right.
right? Of needing to get those performances. How nice, I mean, we've already talked a little bit about momentum, but maybe in a concrete way. When did you guys say like it's playoffs or bust later in this season? Or how has that mentality? I keep talking about the mentality, but I feel like that's all the playoffs are sometimes is just execution. Um, how often have you guys talked about sort of like it's playoffs or bust? We need to be getting these performances later in the season.
Oh, that's a good question. I would say like 8 games left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, we were like, we gotta pull through now. We gotta start clicking now. We gotta start putting the puzzle pieces together. And it was pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I think that's just like our competitor mindset.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants, multiple straight losses. We were trying to go like loss, win, then we got like a tie. Or like, okay, come on, we have to get through this. And so I think it was like 8 games left where we were just like, this feels like we have to win every
Mm-hmm.
game in order to make it to the playoffs.
Who have been those vocal leaders in the locker room for you guys when you're kind of implementing that mindset?
Um, I would say Rachel Hill is an amazing
Mm-hmm.
motivational speech.
Mm-hmm.
She's been through the league. She knows what it takes, and she's such a gritty player that she's just like, even if like your pass is not right, get into hard tackles. So it's just like
Mm-hmm.
all the mentality and grittiness from Rachel. I think more of the tactical stuff is like Caprice. She's like, if we slide this way, we got to go this way. So we got a good mixture of a lot of voices and not just verbal leaders, but also, behavioral. I mean, we have Abby going into slide tackles and Rudy pushing people off the ball in order to get her shot off. So I think we have a lot of leadership on our team as well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, talking a little bit more about you, this is not quite a homecoming, but you did play your college soccer at Stanford and then coming back to the Bay Area as a professional athlete. What has been sort of special in that sense, just playing in the first season in the Bay Area for a new club in the place where you played college soccer as well?
Yeah, I'm actually amazed of how many fans tell me they've watched me play at Stanford, even though it's been like what, 4 years plus? And I'm like, you still been watching women's soccer this whole time? I love it. And it's just like this, just like the connection that the Bay Area has is like we stick with the players that we have in here. We follow you throughout your whole season, and they're like glad that a few of us are still around to see live and in person. So I think that love for women's sports is huge, and then we have the Valkyries coming in as well. So I think that's only just gonna increase. So I'm excited for just the Bay Area to continue with women's sports.
100%. I mean, like, as you just said, an incredible time for professional women's sports in the Bay Area. But as we know, Bay Area living there, people talk a lot about sort of the freedom of movement for players and resources on and off the pitch in certain areas of the country. How has Bay FC kind of taken those steps to make sure that you and your teammates feel really comfortable, again, kind of rolling with the punches of the first year of an inaugural expansion side?
Yeah, starting off with like our first preseason meeting, our basically front office, our hires were saying that this is player centered. This is all around you guys. Whatever you guys need, we got you. We'll find a way to give it to you. If it's like recovery stuff, if it's extra, um, mental health, performance, nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. We'll find a way to give that to you because this is what you guys need to perform at the highest level. Um, so I think that's like been a huge advantage for us, and knowing that they have our back or whatever it is, um, recovery, nutrition, mental balance. Those are just the little details that get us above and beyond.
Yeah, 100%. And this is something that even I've noticed from the outside. I've discussed this with other people that it seems like BFC has taken some of the unique approaches to some of the brand deals as well, some of the brand partnerships where I've seen some promotional materials and stuff like that of some of like the Visa partnership that you guys have with BFC. And
Mhm.
I think what's cool about that from what I've seen in some of the promotional materials and things like that is that it feels like the players are getting involved, which is really nice to see as well. So what's been your experience kind of with some of those brand partnerships like the one with Visa?
Yeah. So with the one with Visa, they make it like very personalized. So like you see like all of us have individual photos of the week or the game. And then we're allowed to post that on our actual like Instagram stories or our actual profile posts. And it gives us an extra little change in our pockets for groceries or whatever we want to use, gas bills, etc. So that's been huge, knowing that not only are we promoting ourselves personally, but also the team and getting just a little bit of cash in our pockets at the end of the day.
Because it seems like the perfect match, right? We talk about this a lot in women's sports of how sometimes athletes in women's sports have to do extra work, right, to kind of
Yeah.
make it to that sort of next
No more
level
side
of resource.
hustles.
Exactly. Hashtag no more side hustles is what we're all about. And so this Visa partnership seems perfect for that because they're just basically having you promote what you do, right? You're
Mhm.
promoting the team. You're basically digging into the core of what makes a pro athlete, and you're being supported in that way. And so that just seems like such a nice meld. So maybe in that context of having some of that extra sway, that ability to kind of enjoy your life in the Bay Area, do you have a perfect like off day in the Bay? Like what is the perfect off day for you?
Oh, this is not a good answer because
Mhm.
usually when it's like a single off day, I'm rotting on my couch or my
Yeah,
bed.
fair. Fair, fair, fair. Yeah.
But if
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a couple days, where I can do stuff and then still rot on my couch, I'd usually like go out and go for like a walk at the parks. There's multiple parks and like um area the perfect almost weather we're having actually right now, like 75 degrees, just slight wind, the sun is out. What did I do recently? We just like had a team get together at a restaurant for someone's birthday,
Love it.
or I like to go uh, bowling or mini golfing. There's top golf as well. So just little things. There's almost, you're in the Bay Area. There's almost everything is close by,
Yep.
so you can hit anything you want. To be honest.
That sounds like perfect. Like, yeah, rest and recovery day, nice and chill, and then just some light activity. That seems
Yes.
like the perfect off day. It does seem also in terms of resources, like everybody in recent history, hopefully this will eventually start to kind of side out. We say like no more side hustles, but it seems like every NWSL athlete maybe has their welcome to the NWSL story in terms of having to stretch resources to kind of chase the dream of becoming a professional athlete. And I wonder if there's anything that sticks out to you, maybe even in college transitioning to pros, of just having to stretch to make this a reality, and also maybe how nice it is on the other end of that to feel like you are getting support from the club and from brand partners.
Hmm. I would say I'm pretty big on like physical recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So like having like our massage therapist be available like 4 times a week,
Yeah.
and then travel with us on away games. That's huge. Another thing is like we have a mental health professional here who is with us
Mm-hmm.
every single training. You can go in the mornings, afternoons, text her, call her if you have anything you want to talk about, go through. I mean, I was talking with her, and now I have a gratitude journal. I write in it every day before
Mm-hmm.
training. So I think just those small practices that make a huge difference. Mental health, physical recovery,
Yeah.
and like I said, nutrition. I mean, we're starting to get hot meals for breakfast instead of maybe slice some toast or bagel and toast it. So I think the little things.
Yeah, no, that all makes perfect sense. It all makes you better, right? And
Hmm.
that's how I feel like a lot of times in women's sports, we talk about the success stories without talking about all those little things that go in behind the scenes to make that happen. So maybe just a final big picture question. And I know you said not done yet, right? Not done yet. But is there
Hmm.
like a single thing you could point out from this season that you're most proud of going into this year with BFC?
I I think I'm just proud of the whole journey and the players and staff together because we really just hung on to the people in the locker room because
Mm-hmm.
we know there's a lot of things going outside. Maybe people aren't talking about us in the beginning because we were, didn't have the best record. And now people are talking about us and what their expectations are. But this is all happening like outside of our little bubble, and we just have to make sure that we stick together and we know that we are going to hang on to each other as much as possible because we gotta trust this inner circle because this is the circle that's gonna win at the end. So not being too, I guess, conscientious about the outside world and focus
Yeah.
on ourselves.
100%. And then looking forward, let's say beyond the postseason, what are the big ambitions for Kiki Pickett going through the rest of this season into 2025?
Ooh, I think the biggest question I have for myself is whether I'm gonna stay in the midfield or not.
Yeah, it's so yeah, you're like it
I
would be great. So you're like I would really love to know where I'm going to be playing. Yeah.
exactly. But right now I think I'm putting a good stamp on my midfield starting career there. I still have a lot to learn. There's a few notes that I have from Angela Salem, doing
Mhm.
a great mentor.
I was going to say talk about resources, having an assistant
Oh
like
yeah,
Angela Salem, like yeah.
I pick her brain almost every day, and I'm like, what do you see?
Mhm.
What do you need? We'll go through film. I'll write it down. Next day, go through all of it again. So I'm always learning, always look for that position specifically. But I think the biggest thing next year is if I should still keep learning the six. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
hurt because you're
No.
just learning a new position, widening my expansion of the knowledge of the game, and it's been helping tremendously.
Well, it does feel like this is going off topic slightly, but positionless football, increasingly we're seeing it. We're seeing so much fluidity in sort of the 3-5 to 3 back to 5 back to kind of pushing people forward, like having center back step forward in possession. It does seem like, if anything, you're going to come out of this year incredibly well rounded, and that also has to feel pretty good.
Yeah, next year forward, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're just got to get final touch, final third. It'll be great. Yeah, incredible. Well, Kiki, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck this weekend.
Awesome. Thank you.
This has been today's edition of The Late Sub. I am your host, Claire Watkins. Shout out to producer extraordinaire Parker Fenton. We will be talking more NWSL later this week. I want to dig into some of the individual awards, talk through my awards ballot, talk about what we're going to be seeing in the semifinals, and probably some little updates on college basketball and maybe some WNBA offseason stuff. We keep going, keep grinding. I'm having a blast. We'll see y'all later this week.